because today is Tu B'Shvat, the birthday of the trees, the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, says that we should increase in eating fruit and making a blessing on it. And we're going to ask Rabbi Moshe Hecht from Chabad of Windsor Terrace to lead us in having some fruit for the holiday.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Tu B'Shvat. It's great to see you all, familiar faces, and those faces that will be familiar after this evening is over. I decided we're going to make a blessing today on one of the 7 species, one of the fruits that the land of Israel was blessed with. I chose the pomegranate, so I have a bunch of pomegranate seeds over here. And this is appropriate for the full screen of faces, of holy faces that I see in front of me. Like this cup is filled with pomegranates, the screen is filled with Jews. So everybody, you can join me with some wine is also appropriate, some grapes, whatever you have, whatever you like. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'etz.
Amen. All right, thank you very much, Rabbi Moshe Hecht. So we did a little prayer, we did a little blessing, and now we're going to move on to our feature speaker and entertainment. So we're going to have tonight our MC, Mrs. Brooke, who is going to run all the questions and the program, and we are looking forward to it. So without further ado, your feature presentation.
Thank you, Rabbi Raskin, and thank you, Rabbi Hecht and Rabbi Wolf, for your words. Can everyone hear me okay? I just want to make sure my connection is working.
Yes, the sound is good. The internet is it's not the best. If you have a better spot, but it will do.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So before we start, I also want to thank Dirah and Chabad of Windsor Terrace for co-sponsoring this event with the CBA Sisterhood. It's wonderful to see the Jewish community of Brooklyn coming together tonight. My name is Brooke Bryant, and along with Holly Wolf, I'm co-president of the Congregation B'nai Avraham Sisterhood and a CBA board member, and I'm so thrilled to be with you all tonight. As a working mom who struggles to do it all, in fact, you might hear a baby squealing in the background because she didn't want to go to bed without me tonight, and a senior executive in my field who balances board meetings with diapers, bottles, and bedtime for a teething 11-month-old, I'm so excited to hear Michals talk. I'm constantly navigating the anxieties of parenting, relationships, and work. There is no script for this. And Michal is an inspiration. Michal Oshman is a powerful businesswoman serving as head of company culture, diversity and inclusion, and employer branding at TikTok Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Formerly, she was a senior executive at Facebook, charged with leadership and team development, and she was also in a senior role at eBay. Throughout her career, Michal has coached hundreds of tech leaders. She has 3 degrees in psychodynamic and systematic thinking, sociology, and anthropology, and to top it off, she's a mom of 4. Michal recently published a book, What Would You Do If You Weren't Afraid? And she will be with us tonight to share her story and some inspiration in honor of Tu B'Shvat. A few words of format for today. We have a prepared Q&A session, and then about 10 minutes from the end, we're going to have questions from the audience. So if you have questions, please place them in the chat, and we'll take them at the end of the talk. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Michal.
Hi, everyone. Good evening or good night. If I saw someone from London, very late in London, good morning, I would say. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. And Brooke, I look forward to our conversation, mother to mother.
Thank you. Me too. And so to kick it off, Michal, here you are on paper, a successful married mother. You're a fully functional woman in the workplace and at home, and you even go to therapy. What triggered you to feel that there was still something lacking in your life? What void was missing that you desired to fill?
Well, that's a big question, and in order to answer it, I do need to ask to kind of maybe 4 or 5 minutes just to share with the audience who I am, because I think some context would be helpful. I know that not everyone got a chance to read the book, and even if you did, so my name is Michal, and thank you for pronouncing it so beautifully. And I'm originally from Tel Aviv, from Israel. I've been living in London for the last 17 years with my husband and 4 kids, Baruch Hashem. And I know that today is a day of celebration of Tu B'Shvat, of growth, of trees, of fruit, of potential, of creation. But I think I think in order to consider growth and fulfillment, maybe a good place to start is with the beginning and the roots. So I do want to share with you my roots and my upbringing. Obviously, my roots, like our roots go way back before our upbringing. But I grew up in Tel Aviv, and my household, the environment in my home was a very sad one, a very difficult one. My grandparents from all sides were Holocaust survivors. And I was very close to my grandmother, Chana, who really raised me together with my parents. We lived side by side, grandmother Chana and my grandfather. And grandmother Chana, like all of my grandparents, survived the Holocaust. And specifically Chana was lucky enough and brave enough to jump off the train on the way to Auschwitz. She felt that something very bad was going to happen, and there are many people that felt that something bad was going to happen, but Tzavta Chana jumped. She jumped off the train, she got injured, she was shot at, but she survived and managed to get to Israel and to build a family. But she was very much traumatized from the Shoah, and my first early memories of childhood were hiding food with my grandmother, hiding tuna cans and baby formula. I was her first granddaughter. She used to force feed me chicken soup. She prepared me for the next bad thing, and she was convinced that something was going to happen. It was only a question of when, and that obviously affected my, let's say, mental health, well-being, and like many other second and third generation. It didn't help, I guess, my mental well-being that my father was also a known figure in Israel. He was the head forensic pathologist of Israel, and I was exposed to death and sad things and difficult things. And on a day like this, of Celebration Day, who wants to talk about these things? But these are also this is part of life. And for many, many years, I struggled with anxiety. I was very, very afraid of everything that could go wrong. And every day that I woke up in the morning, I assumed that it was my last day. But I didn't want to disappoint anyone, and I didn't want my grandparents and parents to be sad. So I did the best to be the best. So I developed, I guess, a new kind of anxiety of not disappointing, the fear of disappointing, which I know many of us are familiar with. So I tried to be the best student and the best daughter and the best soldier. I was an officer in the IDF and the Israeli Defense Forces for 3 years. And, I was highly, highly functional. And after that, I did all those degrees that you kind of very kindly mentioned, Brooke, and I got married, and I even had 3 children. Now I have 4, Baruch Hashem. But I was very sad inside and very, very anxious. And at some point, at the age of 38, after going to therapy, probably for almost 2 decades, and taking medication, I looked in a place that I've never looked before. I never even considered looking for my well-being and for my mental health. And the story of this discovery is what I share in the book.
Yeah, thank you so much. And what a story. And to start it off, your resume in life seemed perfect from the outside and so much aligned with what you said of being highly functional. Great jobs at, world-class companies, multiple degrees, a family, a husband. But you also mentioned you've been suffering from mental health challenges. Talk to us about how those two things can exist side by side, the mental health issues and such a kind of a functional, accomplished outer life.
Yeah. So first of all, we never know what's going on in a person's life, right? Like we should be very, we all do it, of course. We look at the outside or what the LinkedIn account looks like, or even, you know, what they look like, you know, walking around on the street, and we make all sorts of assumptions. And like many other people, I worked quite hard, I guess, to have that kind of persona, to be kind of, you know, that seems like everything's going well. I also think that anxiety has different sides to it. And one of the ways that I channeled my anxiety is to doing, but not doing from joy or doing from growth, or wanting to grow, doing from fear. And I think they're very different. They're very, very different of making, taking action and making, I assumed what I knew from my house is that my home as a child is that we're not supposed to be happy. I thought we were supposed to live in guilt and not to be happy. And that really went deep into my essence. And later on the journey, I realized that we were supposed to live in simcha. That living in joy is the way to live. And even if there's struggle, then we overcome it, or we try to overcome it. And we know that if we're down today, it's only in order to be up tomorrow. But those are things that I learned later on the journey.
And so how were you exposed to Jewish wisdom? What is the Jewish wisdom? How were you exposed, and who is it for? Is it only for observant Jews, or is it for all Jews?
Yes, so I feel very, very passionate about this. And that's obviously why I'm here today with you. So I grew up, first of all, I have an allergy of trying to box people, and I try not to do that because I don't like when people do it for myself, to myself. But just to give a bit again of context, I grew up in a home. Obviously, I'm from Israel. I grew up in a Jewish home, but I had no idea what Judaism meant in a spiritual way. I had no idea what were those holidays that we were celebrating. And, we were mainly celebrating the holidays with food, but less about understanding, what stands behind Pesach, Passover, which is, working on your ego or letting go, what stands behind Rosh Hashanah. And so, for me, really being Jewish didn't mean that much. I was very respectful of my identity and faith, but it wasn't something that we discussed, or talked about at home. I also was brought up in a home where we didn't really practice Judaism. So we didn't keep Shabbat or do Kiddush. My mother never lit Shabbat candles. So I guess I was culturally Jewish. And for anyone that has been in Israel, in Israel, it's kind of in the air, right? And Yom Kippur, no one needs to tell you it's Yom Kippur. There's no cars in the road. So it's a different kind, I guess, of Judaism. And for me, Judaism was mostly what people looked like, or what they were allowed or not allowed to do. If you're wearing something or if you're eating something or not, it was kind of that black and white way. So I never considered Judaism for anything that has to do with my joy or my growth or my well-being. But at the age of 38, as I mentioned to you, when I was really concerned for myself, and I want to I really believe in being honest, and I wrote the book. I'm quite vulnerable in the book. I share my experiences, my mental health experiences, and the reason I do that is not because I have this passion to share the most private and personal experiences that I've had in my life, or with my husband, or with my children, or with my parents. Is because I really want to normalize as much as we can mental, emotional experiences that people go to. So at the age of 38, as you said, Brooke, on the outside, it seemed like I have it all. And I really had so many things to celebrate, for real. But inside, I felt empty. And I was so ashamed of myself, because I was at the same age of my Savta Chana when she saved her life, when she was shot at. And here I am living in London, having so many things to celebrate. And I was still anxious, and I couldn't let my children go on school trips because I was afraid that they're going to God forbid. And for me, the only scenario was the worst case scenario. So at some point, I got worried about myself and about thoughts that I had in my head. And I shared them with my husband, and we really tried different things. We tried Buddhism, and, we tried everything we knew. But on one, now I call it Shabbat, but then I call it Saturday. One Saturday morning, I saw a family walking to shul next to my neighborhood. And for some reason, they just seemed, peaceful. Not that I'm saying that every family that walks to shul doesn't argue with each other, or there's no disagreement and everything's beautiful, but that family looked really in a good place. So I opened my laptop and I typed anxiety, fear, depression. And for some reason, in addition to joy and happiness, I typed Judaism. And the search result took me to Lubavitch, a doctor in psychology, who does research on the connection between emunah, faith, and joy and simcha. And I reached out to her, and she was the one that opened the door. She was the first one that opened the door to Chabad, to teaching, to learning Tanya. And if someone doesn't know about the Tanya yet, I'm very happy to share, and I'm sure that the rabbis and rebbitzins in this call can advise on how to start learning, but I do quote quite a bit from the Tanya in the book. So here I am, this city girl, as you said, having all these things, and I was advised to go to a Tanya shiur. And I arrived to the shiur, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Everyone looks different to me, and they're learning from this ancient text. And, I really felt I didn't belong in that room until the Rabbi Gordon, started reading in Hebrew. And he said the words neshama and nitzot, and he even said etzev, which is sadness. And 38 years or maybe more of sadness and fear just started coming out through my ears with tears. And I literally cried for a few days. And it really touched my soul. And I thought it was beautiful that from the Tehillim that we just read in the beginning, when it says, Ishomeret nafshecha, which is, he will guard your soul. I didn't know I had a soul. You see, I had no idea that there were parts of me, a part of me, in me, a godly part in me, that regardless of all the things that I had seen or had been done to me, that part is as pure as it was in the beginning. I had no idea. As a child, I asked my father, who conducted 40,000 autopsies, if there is a smaller body in the bigger body that never disappears, even when the bigger body is buried. And he said, no, it's done. So I discovered that there was something there that I felt as a child. I just had no one to talk with about. So once you discover you have a soul, it's a game changer. And I did a lot of learning, and I'm doing a lot of learning, and please God, I have more time to learn and educate myself. But that was the door opening to me 8 years ago. And you can imagine that when you make a discovery like this, it affects how you look about life, how you want to raise your children, and also the things that you want to do from a practical point of view. So that was a life-changing moment for me.
Incredible. And before we go on to the next question about you, I would love to hear your take on who Jewish wisdom is for. Is it just for observant Jews, or who is this for?
Sorry, you asked me. I don't know, tonight I'm a bit...
You're amazing. I asked you like a 5-part question, so of
you
course.
Asked me, normally I make notes. You see, that's the perfectionist. I'm going against perfectionism, by the way, Brooke, because it just causes unnecessary anxiety.
That's my resolution for the year, Michal.
Unnecessary. So who is this for? This is for... So my book is not a religious book. And I don't think Judaism is only for Jews or only for practicing Jews. That's my opinion. My book is a self-help book. It's a book that for anyone that is curious, to learn about spiritual Judaism, that wants to discover that the fact that Judaism has a psychology in it. And with all due respect to Sigmund Freud, and I have a couple of degrees when I was all obsessed with Mr. Freud or Professor Dr. Freud, he didn't start the psychology or, psychotherapy. Judaism has a psychology in it, and so does the Tanya, as I'm sure you know. And, this is a wisdom that was created thousands of years ago, because you know what? It's not only now that we started feeling anxious, and it's not only now that we started feeling jealousy and comparing ourselves to others and, feeling empty, people have been feeling this for thousands of years. And, that's why we were given this wisdom to navigate life. The problem is, or the challenge is, or the opportunity is, depends on what day you ask me, is how to tell the story of the Jewish wisdom in a way that will appeal to anyone and everyone that wants to grow. And that's why I wrote the book. So like you, Brooke, I was juggling with my youngest was a real baby when I was writing the book, and I found myself at 11 p.m. after she finally went to sleep after, I don't know, a million times. I got a kind of glass of red wine, and I wrote the book. I wrote the book because it's my mission. And what I'm trying to do now through the book, but through, conversations like this, and, share this beautiful wisdom with the world, and universal wisdom. There is nothing that you can't learn from, regardless of your faith, non-faith, how you live your life, your preferences, your life preferences. All of the ideas in the book are very welcoming, I hope.
So the book's title is quite unusual. Why this title, and what's the story behind it?
So the book's title is "What Would You Do If You Weren't Afraid?" And I know that people will have a chance to get a copy, which were very kindly purchased by your community. And so the title, "What Would You Do If You Weren't Afraid?" is actually from Facebook. So, I mean, it's not originally from Facebook, but that's where I saw it, and it really affected me. So I started working for Facebook about maybe 8 years ago, maybe more. Now I work for another tech company. And on my first day at Facebook, which was pretty much when I discovered the Tanya, and I'm not comparing Facebook to the Tanya in any shape, way, or form, but it was just around the same time. When I realized, when I started studying Tanya, I realized, Michal, there is a chance that you will enjoy life. There is a chance, you still don't know exactly how, that you'll wake up in the morning and you'll breathe, and your assumption will be that you will get to the end of the day and no tragedy will happen. And when I started working for Facebook, the big kind of sign poster that was on top of the kind of above the reception desk and all over the office is Facebook's internal mantra. And it asks employees, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And the assumption is that we are afraid. As humans, we're afraid of failing. We are afraid of letting go. We're afraid of not being smart enough, successful enough, beautiful enough, anything enough. And that fear stops us from doing things because we don't want to fail. So maybe better not to do anything. So the company, in order to invite people to bring their creativity to the forefront, they say, what would you do if you weren't afraid? What would you do if you weren't afraid? And then just side by side to that poster, there's another poster that says fail harder, which again is an invitation and a reminder for people that if you go for your idea, if you try life, you will fail at some point. A relationship, an exam, a job. And at least if you fail harder. Fail when you gave it everything you have, right? And I have this fear because there's this guy that left me on the day that I thought he was going to propose. Not, this is many, many years ago, but I had a boyfriend, and after I served in the military and a couple of other jobs, and I thought he was the one. And on the day that I thought he was going to propose to me, he actually left me. And you can imagine the heartbreak, and I can talk about that later, even though who wants to talk about that? But then when I married my husband, I was really afraid that, what happens? What happens if I fail, if it fails? But then I reminded myself that, you know, fail harder, and no one wants to fail a marriage, but I'm going to give it everything I have. Every single day, I try to give as much as I have, and also take. And of course, it's, you know, a relationship. So that idea of what would you do if you weren't afraid really fascinated me. And that's why I called it, I named the book this way. And I also discovered that the DNA of the Jewish people is to be afraid, that's okay, but to overcome fear, to do. And for someone who was frozen inside for many years, that was a very welcoming approach to life, to do.
Incredible. And it sounds like you were able to build so much trust in yourself through that process. But it's also very hard to build that trust. And trust in oneself is often tied to a higher power. How did you build that trust within yourself that you were able to look to faith? What steps did you take?
I love this question. I love it. I love this question, and I'll try to answer it, even though I'm still really so much learning about this. So actually, in the context of Tu B'Shvat, so as a child, I used to, I'll try not to be emotional now because I only remember this today. I forgot about it and then I remember today. So as a child, I'm not good in drawing at all. But the only thing I used to draw are trees. Just trees. And I remember that I used to draw, you know, the whole tree, but mainly the roots, going deep down, you know, into the soil. And when I spoke with Rabbi Raskin a couple of weeks ago ahead of this call, we were speaking about Tu B'Shvat, and Tu B'Shvat is a very special holiday in Israel. It's actually one of those beautiful holidays that I do remember from school because, you know, we know that we're living on a holy land. And regardless of which school you go to, you celebrate Tu B'Shvat with beautiful fruit. And the teachers remind us of our roots and also the connection to Israel. And I think going to your question about, you know, how do you grow that trust or that confidence? I think what I've been working on in the last 8 years is actually working on my roots. And the word in Hebrew for me is bitachon. And bitachon is a really beautiful word in Hebrew. It does mean, I guess, security or safety or trust. And if someone can help me on the call, tell me. But, you know, because I am an Hebrew speaker, kind of, you know, mother tongue, what I realized is that, you know, when you have bitachon, when you know that there's Hashem and, you know, your connection, you get perspective. You get, you know, you learn that you have an neshama, right? You know that you're here for a reason. These are things that I learned, you know, I guess at a relatively older age or more advanced. You know, some people learn this from very young age. So the combination of knowing that I have a soul and it's a godly soul, knowing that I'm here for a reason also. One of the beautiful sayings in Chassidut, which I say to my children, probably not often enough, but I should improve, is the day you were born was the day that the world was missing you. How beautiful is that? That we're not here by chance. I thought I was stuck into my family. I mean, you know, I just didn't understand why I was needing to experience certain things. Now I know I was there because I was able to be here now. So the idea that, and the belief that the day you were born, every single person on this call, and I think we have at least 120, which is a beautiful number, but probably more, and more people will watch it later. So the hundreds of people that are watching us now or later, you know, we're all here for a reason. And the beautiful thing is that the day that we were born, the world was missing us, but every single day that we're here, the world needs us to do something or to be someone. And suddenly I kind of shifted my focus from being quite obsessed about myself, my looks, my success, you know, what my outlook looks like. and realize that I have a role to play here, and it's potentially beyond parenting and beyond, being a wife, and, even though these are huge roles, and that took down the anxiety. I think when I felt less obsessed about myself and showed more care and love for others, the anxiety, and then with that came volunteering and doing tzedakah, which is things that I've never ever done before in my life. Slowly, it doesn't happen in a day, Brooke, and I'm sure no one would expect that. The anxiety started decreasing, and the meaning started kind of going up. And like many people here on the call, I know that when you find more meaning in life, it can potentially reduce your anxiety, and I'm working on that as well.
It's incredible. And how incredible that when you were able to have that kind of faith in yourself and your purpose, that you could look outward to help others. It's inspiring. I'm curious to hear how you translate and understand the word tshuva and how you adapt this concept into your life.
First of all, I love the word teshuva, just the word itself. And teshuva is return to Hashem, but the word comes from the word lashuv, to return. And I love the idea, and you can imagine that I spent quite a bit of time thinking about these things. I love the idea that we can each return to ourselves, the original selves, right? Before, let's say, life happened, or before the things that hurt us happened. And the idea that I can return to that young girl before I heard things or saw things, or, I remember myself before. I couldn't put words, to who I was. But you don't have to go, 46 years back. You can return to the potential of who you can be all the time, right? That's what we do teshuva on Yom Kippur, right? It's an invitation. I see Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, as a beautiful invitation to return to yourself, to remind yourself, hey, Michal, are you living the life you're supposed to live? Are you fulfilling, yourself, your meaning? And, it's a good reminder. Now I understand that Yom Kippur is not a sad day. It's not a scary day. It's a day of return. And I think when we return to ourselves, we also get much clearer about what matters to us. And in connection to returning to yourself, I love the idea of forgiveness. And part of the journey first of all, it's a Jewish invention. We invented forgiveness, in case you didn't know, or anyone that identifies, with Jewish culture and wisdom. And it was actually in the portion a few weeks ago. This idea that you can choose to forgive. And, sometimes it's very hard to forgive, yourself, by the way, or others. And some things are not forgivable. I don't know if that's a word in English, but I just made it up. But part of my journey was to stop blaming my parents. I spent many hours and many dollars, blaming my parents. And that's okay, because I needed that as well. But at some point when I went to therapy, I realized that I'm looking back all the time, rather than looking forward, that I was spending a lot of my energy on blaming. And at some point, after I discovered Chassidut and Tanya, I actually made a decision to let go, to forgive my parents. They didn't harm me, on purpose. It was just the way that they were raised. And, today we raise our children with lots of, we say to them all these words, you're beautiful, you're smart, I was raised for survival. And, who can blame my grandparents and my parents? That was their mindset. So teshuva is an opportunity to return to yourself, to return to Hashem. Remind yourself that you're here for a reason. Ask yourself if you're living the life and behaving in the way that is best for your soul. And by the way, one more thing, Brooke. Sometimes when we're not feeling happy, and sometimes when we're sad, it's a way of the soul to send us a signal that we're not living the life that our soul needs us to live. it's just a wake up for the body, that, you know, maybe we can make some changes, not huge changes, but like a change that can really help us inside. So I like that idea as well.
Beautiful. That's all beautiful. So speaking of change, when someone wants to make a change, whether it's leaving a job, starting something new, how do they know if they're going toward or away from what they truly desire? And what are some of the questions that they should ask?
Yeah. So this is where I'm always so grateful that my, you know, this wisdom that I discovered, it can, you know, connect between my personal life to my, you know, professional life, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that, sorry, someone's just knocking on the door. I'm in a hotel room. That's strange. Yair, can you, sorry, I'm going to ask my husband to check. Yair, can you see who's at the door? Sorry, they opened the door. And one of the things that sorry, this was very weird. Someone opening the door. Brooke, can you remind me what you asked? Just a hint.
Sure. We were talking about change, and if someone's making a change, what are questions they should ask to reflect and see if they're going in the right direction?
So actually, I love the idea of change, and you know, and how one can learn how to, you know, change and grow themselves or their careers or their family life. And I actually wrote about it, a song that I love about change in the book. And for anyone that, you know, has been to maybe, you know, an event in shul or in a Jewish community, you probably heard the song of the narrow bridge. So I'm going to read it because it's actually on the back of the book. And it goes like this. It's short, and I'm not going to sing it, but it's beautiful sung as well. The whole world is a very narrow bridge, a very narrow bridge, a very narrow bridge. And the main thing is to have no fear at all. So thinking about change, one of the beautiful ways of thinking of change is like, you know, thinking about a bridge, right? And kind of having that image of a bridge. And when you're on one side of the bridge, you're obviously considering going to the other side, right? And what's between you here and your growth or your development is going through the other side of the bridge. And, you know, it's really helpful to take a minute wherever you are on the bridge and say, do I belong on this side of the bridge? Do I belong in this side? Is this where I can be myself? Is this where I feel bitachon, right? Emunah, grounded, safe? Is this where I feel fulfilled? Is this how I can bring meaning to myself and to the world and to my community? Or do I belong more on the other side of the bridge? And I think once you consider where do you belong, where can you be yourself? Where do you have more chance to be the best version of yourself? You can know if you're running away from something or if you're actually going towards something. And I don't believe in running away from something, you know, especially in relationships, right? Sometimes you say, okay, I'll just like, you know, I'll just end the relationship. But if it's something about you, you'll take it with you to the other bridge. So, you know, you're not solving, you know, you're just going to get exhausted from crossing bridges. So, you know, I try to bring this to life in my practice as a coach. I try to bring it to life of how I make decisions. And hopefully for my children. That's the beautiful also element in Jewish wisdom. You can use it in, you know, in any part of your life. It's you know, it's relevant. So that's how I think about change. And, you know, I know we have so many people on the call now, so we won't be able to probably open the mics, but, you know, if anyone on the call wanted to, if you'd like to take a minute, maybe even, you know, grab a pen and paper, or your iPhone, but just don't look at messages, and just ask yourself, you know, what is a bridge that is in front of you now? A bridge could be leaving a job or starting a job. A bridge could be, you know, starting to learn something new. A bridge could be, you know, connecting with a community. So, you know, these are bridges, and, you know, it's could be helpful to think about what's in your brain, what's in your way to cross it. And sometimes, Brooke, I hear from people, I want to meet my future wife. I want to do a career change. I want to, I don't know, get fit. But if you don't date, if you don't apply for a new job where you whatever studying, and if you don't try to eat a bit less and exercise a bit more, these things probably won't happen. So, going back to the Jewish wisdom, it is about taking action. I'm not saying that it's easy, it's not. But one step on the bridge is already so impactful.
Incredible. And I think such a clear idea that we can all take into our lives. So when one looks at you, one sees a leader. We see someone through who all of her life experiences, you've chosen that role. What do you say to someone who shies away from leadership?
I will say what the Rebbe said, which is everyone has the potential to be a leader. And and is a leader. And sorry if I misquoted here for people that are proper educators and not just me speaking from the heart. But I really believe in that. I genuinely, Brooke, in all my Ramachavar, like everything that I have, I believe that everyone has the potential to be the leader. The problem is that many people, when they think about leaders, they think about those people with a title CEO or president or head of something or the richest person. And then they immediately say, well, that's not me. But a leader is a person that leads an event in their community. A leader is a person that sees that someone needs help and they organize people around them to support. A leader is a person that wakes up in the morning and asks themselves, what am I going to do now today for myself and for others? And they take action. So I'm very, very passionate about changing, let's say, the mindset within people's minds about leadership. And yes, I held formal leadership positions in the military and in companies, as you said. But actually, the leadership role that I'm most excited about is I'm the leader of my family. My husband and I co-lead our family. I'm the CEO and he's the CFO. He's also the person that just saved me when that person opened the door. So he's also my bodyguard. Keeping things real. You had your baby. I had someone opening the door. I was in total shock before, as you can see. So, we lead. We lead all the time. You're leading now, Brooke, right? So, we just need to change the mindset, and knowing leading is to do something meaningful for yourself, but mainly for others, caring for others, and not obsessing about yourself. And I think, that just opens the gates to lots of leaders.
It's beautiful and so powerful to think that we can all lead in whatever sphere that we're in. Just so for everyone, as time is ticking and flying with this amazing conversation, I have 2 more questions for Michal. And if anyone has a question, I would encourage you to put it in the chat. We're hoping to have a few audience questions at the end. So penultimate question, Michal, to start to pull everything together, what tips can you give us to feel better about ourselves and realize our potential?
Yes. So in addition to the things that we touched on, right, that understanding that you have a godly soul, deep understanding that you have a godly soul, understanding that your soul and you are here for a reason. You're here to be, you have an opportunity. Every single day is a new opportunity. Now, I know it sounds, but there's a beautiful saying in Chassidut that a person may arrive to this world for 70, 80 years just to do one favor for someone else. It's that mindset. It's a mindset shift. So kind of, adding these ideas, the day you were born was the day that the world was missing you. Every day is an opportunity to return to yourself, teshuvah, right? So these are like the elements that I've been kind of adding in my mind. What we haven't talked much about is meaning. And one of the books and one of the scholars that really deeply inspired me and was supported by the Lubavitcher Rebbe and probably would never publish his world-changing, life-changing book called Man's Search for Meaning is Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl shared his experience in Auschwitz and in other camps during the horrendous events of the Holocaust, and what he learned in his research. He was a doctor in neurology, I think, and also a psychiatrist, student of Sigmund Freud. What he learned from the unbearable, reality of the Holocaust is that the people that had a greater chance to survive and that had let's say a greater resilience to try and live one more day, because it wasn't in people's control if they survived or not, of course, but had that resilience to stopping them from running, let's say, to ending this whole thing, because why live or pretend live in these circumstances, were actually the people that found purpose in Auschwitz. And a purpose could be to write about Auschwitz after the war. A purpose could be to reconnect with your family. And Viktor Frankl himself writes that what was keeping him alive was his love for his wife. Unfortunately, he discovered that she was murdered after he was rescued, but it kept him alive. I kept Viktor Frankl alive for the 5 or 6 years that he was 5 years that he was there. So for people to know that actually it's really healthy and it's good for our mental health and well-being and could potentially reduce anxiety if we find meaning. And it doesn't have to be that meaning I have a startup company, meaning I'm an exec, right? It's that everyday meaning, and meaning changes, right? Sometimes your meaning is to be a parent, another day is to learn, the third day is to do something for your community. So adding all those together, if people are happy to do like the work, and it is work, it's avodah, which is work in Hebrew, I think that great things can happen. And on top of all of that, or the core of all of that, is a decision if you want to let yourself connect to Hashem and to live a spiritual life.
Beautiful. And such a clear pathway and things we can remember every day. My last question, and then we do have a couple from the audience, is if there's anything else you would add to bring the learnings that you've shared today into Tu B'Shvat. I know you touched on a few ideas of the roots and bitachon, but is there anything else that ties these learnings into Tu B'Shvat that you'd share?
I'm actually, I'm so inspired by Tu B'Shvat. I actually went to one of our shops, our fruit shops, and probably bought every single fruit there that I haven't eaten for a year. And I'm looking at this fruit that I don't even know what it's called, but I'm curious about it. But I think, I'm curious about it. I'm also curious about how I can grow this year. How I can grow, as a tree with hopefully beautiful, meaningful leaves and fruit. And I know I have potential. Sometimes I'm afraid. I should maybe read my book when I'm afraid. But I think Tu B'Shvat is such a beautiful reminder to all of us that, we are like trees. We have potential to grow. If our roots are deep inside and we know who we are and why we are here, the branches and the fruit, because the endless growth ahead of everyone here on the call today and anyone that's going to watch this. So that's how I'm feeling today in this Tu B'Shvat.
Beautiful. So we do have 4 minutes left and a couple of questions I hope you don't mind if we take. So Maya asks if you feel like you draw on your Jewish values in your coaching at work, even possibly before your spiritual Judaism insight.
Thank you, Maya, for asking. So I think I didn't have the knowledge at all before I actually started studying. So for ideas that I try to bring today, for example, ideas of humility, I probably started bringing them in the last 8 years through my learnings. I think what I did bring to my coaching practice probably before is this, I guess, more identity coming from, the home that I was raised in, right? A lot of black and white, which wasn't really good, but I knew that many leaders, potentially like myself, do a black and white and trying to kind of navigate between those two. But I hope I'm improving now that I have a really special new tool in my toolbox called Jewish wisdom.
Beautiful. And Kara asks, you spoke about how you would do from a place of anxiety, shame, or fear. What are some tools that you use to manage this and to instead do from that place of joy?
Ooh. It's work in progress. I'll be totally honest. I know my default is to go to doing from fear. I actually know that. So first of all, knowing is often, I know it's a cliche, but knowing is often like half of it, half of the, growth. And I challenge myself in my head, right? These are thoughts that I have in my head. I ask myself, I was always curious about the ego. But once I learned about, the two forces that we have inside ourselves, myself, I'll talk for myself. I think everyone has a good inclination and a less good inclination, and the tension between them. I realized that first of all, I normalized this tension, right? And in my case, it's sometimes to try to achieve something out of fear or competition or, jealousy. Or so when I can feel that side of me kind of, showing its face, I challenge myself and I say, can I channel the huge energy that I have? And Baruch Hashem, I'm blessed with energy, and please God, I have that many, many years ahead. How can I channel this energy, not from that competitive, jealousy, less helpful, anxious side of me, but more from the side of me that wants to grow something, that wants to do something, for good, as well as satisfy myself. I'm not ashamed to say I like growing, I like doing things, I like being impactful. But that's kind of a mind shift in my head. And sometimes actually, Brooke, and I'll say that very quickly, I'm about to do something and I ask myself, what part of me is it coming from? And do I want to channel that part? And I stop. It often happens when I have an argument with my husband, which I'm sure that no one on this call ever had or will have in the future. I share in the book that my tendency is sometimes to get angry a little bit too fast with my children. And I practice in my head how I can channel my passion and care for my children, not through anger, but just to educate them in a more pleasant way. So it's a lot of hard work, I guess. And sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't.
Incredible. So one last, very hopefully quick question from Rabbi Wolf. He asks if there are any other books that you would recommend us read to dive into these topics other than your own.
So I'm so humble that people are actually reading my book. When you write a book, I actually wrote it so my children have the book. So I'm really grateful that people are actually reading it. And really, thank you so much. I learned a lot from the Tanya. I read a lot from Chabad.org. Every time there was a holiday or a moment, like even a birthday, we started celebrating in a different way. I also very much love the writing of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha, who was the chief rabbi in the UK where I live, and obviously wrote beautiful books about leadership, and obviously was very much inspired by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and thanked the Lubavitcher Rebbe for guiding him to go on the journey that ended up with these beautiful books and his big role that he held for passing a year ago. So, if I'll think more, I'll share, and we'll be able to email people if that's okay.
Incredible. Well, Michal, thank you so much. This hour has flown by, but it's been so much inspiration for me personally, and I think for everybody on the call. So thank you so much for making the time. You've given us a lot to think about as we move forward, hopefully towards the spring very soon. I also want to thank one more time the Congregation B'nai Avraham Sisterhood and Rabbis Raskin, Wolf, and Hecht and their families for making this event a possibility. We're wishing everybody a meaningful Tu B'Shvat and hope to see you very soon at another event. Laila Tov, and